My name is Eugene. I'm 84 years old, and I need to tell you something I never said out loud until about 3 years ago. There was a night, a Tuesday, I think, when I sat down at my kitchen table and realized I hadn't spoken a single word to another living person in 4 days. 4 days. Not because I was sick, not because anything was wrong, just because life had quietly arranged itself that way, and I had let it. I'm not telling you that for pity. I'm telling you because I was a man who spent 60 years believing that needing nothing was the same thing as being strong. And that night at that kitchen table, I finally understood what that belief had been costing me. I've lived alone for 11 years now, since Lorraine passed. And in that time, I've made every mistake a person can make, quietly, privately, with nobody watching, nobody around to say, Eugene, that's not right. That's the thing about living alone that nobody warns you about. The silence doesn't announce itself. It just gets louder, slowly, the way winter does. So, 7 things. 7 things I had to learn the hard way, not because someone told me, because I lived them, one at a time, until I had no choice but to change. The first one almost broke me, and I didn't even see it coming. About a year after Lorraine passed, my youngest, Naomi, came by on a Sunday afternoon. She knocked. I opened the door. She didn't say a word for a moment, just looked around the apartment. There were dishes, 3, maybe 4 days worth, stacked in the sink and on the counter. 2 garbage bags I'd tied off but never taken downstairs. A coat draped over the chair where she used to sit. A lamp that had burned out sometime around Thursday that I'd been walking past in the dark. She looked at me. She said, Daddy. Just that, one word. And I felt something I hadn't felt in 40 years. Shame. The particular kind of shame that only comes from someone who loves you seeing you. Here's what I didn't understand then. When Lorraine was alive, the apartment ran on a kind of invisible rhythm. Not because she managed everything, she didn't, but because there were 2 of us. You do the dishes because someone else will notice if you don't. You take out the trash because it's your turn. The other person's presence creates a kind of low-level accountability that you never think about until it disappears. When you live alone, that accountability evaporates overnight, and without it, things pile up. Not all at once. 1 dish, then 2, then a week. Then you're walking around in the dark because the lamp burned out and there was nobody to say, Eugene, have you changed that bulb yet? What I do now, 20 minutes. Every morning after breakfast, dishes first, then surfaces, then whatever else needs doing. I set the timer on the microwave like I'm a child being supervised. And when it goes off, I stop. That's it. 20 minutes keeps a small apartment manageable. It keeps a place feeling like somewhere a person lives, not somewhere a person is disappearing. It sounds small. It isn't. The second thing is about going outside, and I mean that more literally than you might expect. 6 weeks after Naomi's visit, I realized I had not left the building in 11 days. 11 days. I had groceries delivered. I had a prescription called in. I watched more television than I have watched in the entire rest of my life combined. I told myself this was rest. Told myself I'd earned it. What I didn't tell myself, what I couldn't quite admit, was that going outside had started to feel like something that required preparation I didn't have the energy for. Putting on a real shirt, shoes that tied, going where people might see me and ask how I was doing, which would require me to decide on the spot what I was going to say. The pharmacist finally said something. I went in to pick up a prescription and she asked, How are you today, Mr. Johnson? Normal question, the kind people say without expecting much in return. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out for a second. She waited, politely. Fine, I finally said, like a man remembering a language he'd almost forgotten. That bothered me more than the 11 days had, that I'd had to remember. Now I leave the building 3 times a week, minimum. Monday I walk 4 blocks to a diner and order coffee I don't particularly need. Wednesday I go to the park. Not for exercise, just to sit on a bench and watch pigeons make decisions. Friday I go to the grocery store even when I don't need groceries. I walk the aisles slowly. I nod at people. Sometimes someone nods back. It's not dramatic, but something in me stays awake because of it, and that matters. Now, this is going to sound ridiculous, but I need to pause for a moment. I bought a smartphone about 2 years ago because my son Marcus told me I had to. Modern communication, he said. Staying connected, he said. He came over on a Saturday and spent 3 hours showing me how to use it. I retained approximately none of it. What I do remember, I accidentally called Singapore twice. I still don't know how. I also sent a message to my entire contact list that just said, hat, because I was trying to type something else and the phone decided it knew better. My granddaughter Naomi, the little one, not my daughter, still brings it up at every family gathering. Sue Eugene sent us hat, she says, like it's the funniest thing that ever happened. It might be. I've stopped arguing. The third thing cost me something I'm still not entirely sure I've recovered from. I used to wake up at 6, my whole working life. Alarm at 6, coffee by 6:15, out the door before 7. That was the structure of me. I didn't choose it, it just was. When I retired and then later, when Lorraine was gone, the alarm became optional, then unnecessary. Then I stopped setting it. At first it felt like freedom, sleeping until 8, until 9 sometimes. No reason to rush, no reason to be anywhere. 2 months into it, I had no idea what day it was. I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean I had to look at the phone to confirm it was Thursday. And then by the following weekend, I'd forgotten again. My doctor, a no-nonsense woman named Dr. Abby, who talks to me like I'm capable of understanding plain English, which I appreciate, she asked me during a routine visit, "What time do you wake up?" "Whenever," I said. She looked at me. "That's not nothing, Eugene. Your body still runs on a clock. You've just stopped winding it." Now I wake up at 6:30, every day, even when I don't have to, even when there's nothing particular waiting for me. I make coffee. I sit at the table by the window. I watch whatever the street is doing at 6:30 on a Tuesday. The delivery trucks, the woman who walks her dog in pajamas, Daniel downstairs heading to his car in the dark before anyone else is up. The day holds together when it has a beginning. Without one, it just drifts, and you drift with it. The fourth thing is harder to talk about, because it's about pride. For the first few years after Lorraine passed, people called. Her friends, the people from church, old neighbors. They'd say, "How are you doing, Eugene?" And I would say, "I'm doing fine." And they would believe me because I said it in a voice that didn't invite further questions. After a while, they stopped asking. Not because they didn't care, because I'd made it clear, gently and firmly, over many months, that I didn't need checking on. That was the story I was telling myself. The real story was different. The real story is that I was a man who had never, in 80-some years, learned how to let people see him needing something. My father didn't do it. His father before him. You absorbed things. You handled things. You did not perform your difficulties in front of other people. Lorraine used to say I could be bleeding and still tell everyone I was fine. She wasn't wrong. The problem is that when you live alone, fine stops being a social convenience and starts being a prison. Nobody pushes past it. Nobody says, "No, really." You say fine, they believe fine, and you sit in the apartment for 11 days without leaving the building, and nobody knows. What I do now? I answer the phone. Simple as that. Naomi calls every Sunday at 11. I used to let it go to voicemail and call her back hours later when I'd composed myself enough to sound like someone who was doing fine. Now I just pick up, even when I'm not composed, even when I don't have much to say. Those 20 minutes on Sunday morning, she tells me about the grandkids. I tell her about whatever the pigeons were doing at the park. They are the thread that reminds me I am still connected to something. My neighbor downstairs, Daniel, he doesn't ask much. He's not that kind of man. But sometimes he'll knock and say, "You need anything from the store?" And I've started saying yes. Not always because I need something, sometimes just because it means someone knows I'm here. That took me longer than I'd like to admit. The fifth thing nearly killed me. and I mean that with more accuracy than you might be comfortable with. About 4 years into living alone, I started skipping meals. Not on purpose, not with any particular intention, just I'd get to noon and realize I hadn't eaten since the night before. Then I'd get to 3 in the afternoon and think, it's too late for lunch, I'll just wait for dinner. Then dinner would come and I'd open the refrigerator and nothing required effort, and I'd close it again and eat crackers standing at the counter. When Lorraine was alive, we ate at the table, both of us, real food. I didn't cook, she did mostly, but I was there. The meal was an occasion, small as it was. Something that broke the day into thirds. When it's just you, a meal stops being an occasion. It becomes a transaction, an interruption, and the easiest thing is to let the transaction slide. Dr. Abby caught it at a checkup. I'd lost weight I couldn't account for. She asked what I was eating. I told her the truth, more or less, and watched her face do the thing faces do when the news is not good. She said, Eugene, you need to eat like someone is watching, even when they're not. I've thought about that a lot. Eat like someone is watching. Now I make a real breakfast every morning. Eggs, usually. Toast. Juice. I sit at the table. I don't eat standing at the counter. I use a plate. It sounds like nothing, but it changes something. It says, this meal matters. This body matters. This person sitting here matters, even if he's the only one in the room. On Sundays, sometimes Lucas, Daniel's boy, who comes on weekends, will knock and ask if I have any crackers. Just crackers, nothing dramatic. I'll give him crackers. Sometimes I'll have made something, and I'll offer him a piece. He takes it without making a production of it, which I appreciate. He sits on the stool by the counter and eats quietly, and that's the whole thing. No big moment, just a boy eating crackers in an old man's kitchen. Those Sundays, the meal feels like an occasion again. The sixth thing is the one I'm most embarrassed about, because I should have known better. Somewhere around year 3, I stopped having anything to look forward to. I don't mean that dramatically. I wasn't despairing. I was just present tense. Each day was just itself, complete and sealed, with nothing pulling me toward the next one. I'd wake up and there was today, and then tomorrow would come and there would be tomorrow. No difference between them. I was sitting at the diner one Monday, the one I go to for coffee, and the woman who usually takes my order said, "You coming to the thing on Saturday?" I didn't know what thing, but I asked. There was a small concert in the park 2 blocks over. Local musicians, she said. Free. She went every year. Said it was the best 3 hours of her summer. I almost said no. I almost said I was busy, which would have been a lie. Instead, I said I'd think about it. I thought about it for the rest of the week. On Saturday morning, I got dressed, a real shirt, the kind with buttons, and I walked to the park. It was nothing fancy, a small stage, folding chairs on the grass, a band playing music I half recognized, an hour and a half of people sitting in the sun, not doing anything in particular together. I sat in a folding chair and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not happiness exactly, more like anticipation after the fact, the warm residue of having had something to look forward to. I went home and wrote it in my little notebook. Saturday, park concert. And then I wrote, next Saturday, barbershop, long overdue. Now I keep the notebook. Every week I write down one thing, one small thing that gives the next few days a direction. It doesn't have to be significant. It just has to be something. Something that makes Wednesday different from Tuesday, because Wednesday is 2 days before the thing. The weeks are different when they have a shape. That's all I know. The 7th thing is the one I resisted the longest, and the one that mattered most. I thought being capable of doing everything myself was the goal. I truly believed that. Cook my own meals, manage my own appointments, handle my own maintenance, carry my own groceries. Independence, I called it. What I was actually doing was building a very clean, very orderly, very quiet case for my own irrelevance. Because here's what happens when you never need anything from anyone. You become someone people don't think to include, not out of cruelty, out of accommodation. They learn your rhythms. They learn that you don't need help, so they stop offering. And then one day you realize that the only role you play in anyone else's life is the person who manages fine on his own. And managing fine on your own, it turns out, is a very lonely thing to be good at. It was a Sunday, August, maybe 3 years ago. I was carrying a box of books from my bedroom closet, things Lorraine's daughter was going to come collect. Heavy box, more than I should have been carrying. I got halfway down the hall and felt something in my back object very strongly to the whole enterprise. I put the box down. I sat down on the floor next to it, and I stayed there for a moment because I had no particular other choice, thinking about how many years I had spent confusing pride with wisdom. Daniel appeared at some point. He was coming upstairs for something else entirely. He looked at me sitting on the floor next to a box of books. He didn't make a face. He didn't ask 20 questions. He just said, "Where does it need to go?" We carried it down together. He left. I made coffee, that was it. That was the whole thing. But something shifted, because I'd let him. I'd said the address and stepped aside and let someone help me carry something. And the world had not ended. My dignity had not, in fact, dissolved. I've been practicing it since, saying yes when people offer, asking when I need something, not performing capability I don't have just to avoid the discomfort of being seen needing. Lucas asked me last month how the faucet in my kitchen drips. I showed him, a simple thing, the washer, how to tighten it. He listened the way he listens, which is all the way, and then he fixed it, more or less, with his small, careful hands, and looked at me like he wanted to know if he'd done it right. "That's it," I told him. He nodded, went back downstairs. I stood at the sink and ran the water for a moment just to hear the silence where the drip used to be. Thought about all the things I'd fixed alone over 40 years because asking felt like defeat. I was wrong about that. I know that now. 84 years. 60 of them spent believing that the man who needed least was the man who mattered most. What a quiet waste that almost was. This apartment is small, and it's mine. Some mornings I sit at the window with my coffee and watch the street come alive, and I feel something that took me longer to name than it should have. Gratitude. Plain, uncomplicated gratitude. For the window, for the coffee, for the street, for being one of the ones still here to see it. I made every mistake on this list. Every one. Some of them more than once. But I'm still here. 70-some years of Tuesdays, and I can still be surprised by a Tuesday morning. That's not nothing. That's quite a lot, actually. If you sat with me today, if you want to sit with me again, I'll be here. Come back. There's more where this came from. Subscribe. It keeps the company.